Good evening and welcome to our August Committee of the Whole meeting. The Board of Trustees of Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District is now convened in the Committee of the Whole meeting on Thursday, August 10th, 2017 in the boardroom of the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District Instructional Support Center, 10300 Jones Road, Houston, Texas at 6 p.m. For the purpose of reviewing that portion of the Monday, August 14th, 2017 school board agenda designated as action items and to hear designated reports and recognitions posted in the meeting notice as required by Texas law. No action will be taken at this meeting. I want to welcome the members of our audience and our television viewers to this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As the Cypress-Fairbanks Board of Trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports, approve budgets, contracts, personnel appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operations of the district are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, board members received information related to items on tonight's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in closed session to consider matters duly posted for this meeting as permitted by sections 551.071 through 551.084 of the Texas Government Code. These proceedings are airing live on CFTV Channel 16 and CFTV online on the district website. They will also be rebroadcast throughout the month on Channel 16 and available as video on demand on the website. For the tape to adequately reflect the proceedings, I respectfully ask that you please refrain from talking while others are speaking and that cell phones are turned off or in silent mode. Thank you for taking the time to join us tonight and for your interest in the Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District. I do not see anyone from Community Leadership Committee. So let's just move on to our different items. Our action items are first, and we're going to start with consensus. The following items may be considered at both the Committee of the Whole and the regular board meeting. A, the board will consider approving the tax refunds of $500 or greater for Cypress-Fairbanks ISD, and the board will consider approving the minutes of the June 26, 2017 regular meeting. Those are consensus. Are there any questions about those items, or can they remain as consensus? Consensus? Now let's move to 5 non-consensus items. The board will consider awarding bids and contracts and/or authorizing purchase orders as recommended in the posted agenda item. Concrete installation, demolition, and bollards. Is that the way you say that? Yes or no? Yes. Bollards. Okay, great. 2, laboratory specimens. 3, police department laptops. Any questions on that item? Seeing none, can we move that to consensus, ladies and gentlemen? I see agreement there. The second non-consensus item is B, the board will consider approving the agreement for the purchase of attendance credits, netting Chapter 42 funding pursuant to the Texas Education Code, Chapter 41, for the 2017-18 school year. And I understand, Mr. Snow, you have a brief presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Mingoya, members of the board, and Dr. Henry. We have received official notification from TEA that for fiscal year 2017-18, we will continue to be classified a Chapter 41 school district. If you recall, in previous years, we have been a Chapter 42 district, but last year for the 2016-17 fiscal year, for the first time, CFISD was designated a Chapter 41 district. Under the current school finance system, a property poor school district under Texas Education Code Chapter 42 benefits from the property wealthy school districts under Chapter 41 by receiving state recapture funds from Chapter 41 districts that are sent to the state to be distributed to the property poor school districts through the equalization formulas. When a school district is funded according to whether a school district is funded according to Chapter 41 or 42 is determined by the amount of its property wealth per student in weighted average daily attendance. Chapter 41 school districts are those with property values per WADA, weighted average daily attendance, greater than or equal to the amount that's set in statute, which currently is $319,500. This amount is referred to as the equalized wealth level. For 2017-18, CFISD's property wealth per student is projected to be $345,484, which exceeds the statutory limit of $319,500. The reason why we are now and continue to be a Chapter 41 school district is because over the last few years, the rate of our property value growth has exceeded the rate of our student enrollment growth. School districts whose wealth per WADA exceeds the equalized wealth level are required to reduce its wealth per WADA by the amount necessary to bring down its wealth per WADA down to the equalized level using one or more of the 5 statutory options that are available in the Texas Education Code Chapter 41. Option 1 is to consolidate with another district. Option 2 is to detach property of the district. Option 3 is to purchase average daily attendance credits from the state. Option 4 is to contract to educate non-resident students from a partner district. And Option 5 is a tax-based consolidation with another district. Currently, nearly all 41 Chapter 41 districts have selected either Option 3 or 4 or possibly a combination of both. The current statutes provide for 3 equalized wealth levels. Level 1 is currently $514,000 per WADA, which is equivalent to the yield that is provided by the basic allotment as defined in the Texas Education Code Chapter 42. Level 2 allows property wealthy districts to retain tax revenue on the equivalent tax effort that's raised by the Austin ISD on the first 6 pennies above the compressed tax rate of $1. And then level 3 is set in statute, as I mentioned, at $319,500 per WADA and applies to any tax effort that exceeds a district's compressed tax rate plus 6% or 6 cents. Districts with wealth per student that exceeds the $514,000 equalized wealth level are subject to recapture, meaning that those districts actually write a check to the state to purchase attendance credits. And it's these districts whose payments to the state are then distributed to the property poor districts under Chapter 42 that I mentioned earlier. School districts such as CFISD with wealth per student between the $319,500 and the $514,000 do not pay recapture unless the district's adopted M&O tax rate exceeds its compressed rate plus 6 cents. Now, since our adopted M&O tax rate of $1.04 is comprised of the compressed rate of $1 plus an additional 4 cents, the district is not going to be subject to recapture for 2017-18 or the foreseeable future, unless in the future we adopt a tax rate greater than $1.06, which also requires an election for any rate greater than $1.04. However, the district will still be considered a Chapter 41 district and will be required to inform TEA of the Chapter 41 option that we elect, inform the TEA of that option and our intent to reduce our wealth per WADA in the event that either our equalized wealth level exceeds the $514,000 or in the event that we adopt an M&O tax rate that exceeds $1.06 for 2017-18. I know this makes a whole lot of sense to everybody, but based on our long-term projections of student enrollment, weighted average daily attendance, and property values, we should not exceed the $514,000 equalized wealth level and therefore be subject to recapture until the 2026-27 fiscal year. So we're a long way away from that, or unless we hold a tax rate election to increase our M&O tax rate above the $1.06 before that time. According to Chapter 41, districts may not adopt a tax rate for 2017-18 until the Commissioner of Education has certified the district's intent selection, the form that we will indicate which option that we choose to reduce our equalized wealth level. So let me say that even though we will continue to be considered a Chapter 41 district in 2017-18, it will have no effect on our budget or our financial position. The only impact to us is that we must notify TEA, as I mentioned, of our option selection to reduce our equalized wealth level in the event that we adopt a 2017-18 M&O tax rate greater than $1.06, which we will not be doing. So unless our equalized wealth level falls below $319,500 in any fiscal year, we will continue to follow this process each year, and so I will bring this every year at this time to you. So at this time, I recommend that we choose option 3, which is the purchase of average daily attendance credits from the state, and as such, you are required to and if you approve of option 3, then you would be required to approve an agreement to purchase such attendance credits, netting Chapter 42 funding, which is, I believe, is in your board book. So, and then we are required to notify TEA of our intended selection by September 1st. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Snow. Any questions? Mr. Covey?
Just maybe 2, okay? Number 1, if we're purchasing these, and maybe I misunderstood when you were doing it, so are we talking about we're going to have to expend money to purchase these credits, or we're just saying we're using the difference on what we've got?
No, sir. What we're doing is notifying through an agreement that in the event that for some reason for 2017-18 our equalized wealth level is greater than $514,000, which it won't be, or if we held a tax rate election that exceeds our M&O tax rate or is greater than $1.06 on our M&O tax rate, then in those events, then the recapture would kick in and that agreement would kick in. And so all we're doing is notifying the option that we select to do that. The commissioner, as I mentioned, until he receives that notification letter and the agreement by the board, then we're not allowed to adopt our M&O tax rate for 2017-18.
Okay,
And that we anticipate doing in October.
And then one more little question, I'm sure you don't need to answer this, but Chapter 41 schools, as you mentioned, send their money back into the legislature, which goes into the general fund. And
Chapter 41 districts that are subject to recapture, there are a lot of Chapter 41 districts in the state. Many of them are neighboring districts that are in our position not subject to recapture. But those districts that are subject to recapture are required to send money, actually write a check to the state, and the state then, through the equalization formulas, the school finance system, redistributes that money out to the property poor districts under Chapter 42.
which may or may not get all the monies out to the property poor, right?
Well, yeah, that's part of the money that is the basis for the foundation school program.
Okay. Thanks.
It does, Mr. Covey, though, to your point, I think it does go in the general fund.
Yes, it does.
So it doesn't necessarily go towards education.
It's not dedicated solely for the foundation school program. It does go into the general fund.
Yes, Mr. Jackson?
Stuart, I know you always do sensitivity analysis, and I'm not asking you to do it tonight, but perhaps next year when you make the presentation, you might do the calculation to identify for us the magnitude of wealth that would have to move into the district in 1 year, or the number of students that we would need to lose in 1 year to actually move above that threshold.
I actually have something like that. I've already done it. I hope I've.
But somehow I'm not surprised.
I hope that I brought it in my file. Yes. On the assessed valuation for 2017-18, our property values are at just a little over $52 billion, and it would have to move up to well over $79 billion to be able to trigger recapture. And our enrollment then would have to increase by nearly 8,000 students.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Would we like to keep that separate, or would we like that to be part of consent?
I think separate's good.
All right, that will be a separate item. Moving on to C, the board will consider approving an election order calling for an election on Tuesday, November 17th, 2017 for Cypress-Fairbanks Independent School District trustees, positions number 5, 6, and 7. Any questions on the materials we received about that? Would you like that to be a separate item or on consent?
Separate, please.
Separate? All right, that will be a separate item.
Just one little statement to go in there, and that is in looking at what the approximate cost of the election is $300,000. And if I'm not incorrect, when we used to have our elections in May, those elections ran $45,000. Isn't that correct, or somewhere in that $40,000 range? So because we moved to November, it's gone up $260,000. I just hope everybody out there understands what we were forced to do. So just to let you know.
Thank you, Mr. Covey. Any other questions? All right. D, the board will consider the endorsement of candidacy for Charles Cunningham, Humble ISD, position 4B on the TSAB, the TASB Board of Directors. So this is an agenda item that we have an opportunity to endorse Charles. He has been in the position for a while. Both Bob Covey and myself know him for a number of years, and I think all of you have met him several times. He's our designated representative for Region 4, and I would like us to endorse him so that he doesn't have to go through an election process. Everyone comfortable with that? Bob, did you want to add anything about Charles?
No, I think you covered it. He's very good.
Yeah, he's been working in Region 4 very actively for a number of years. Can that be consent, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah.
All right, great. E, the board will consider approving the memorandum of understanding between Harris County Juvenile Board and Cypress-Fairbanks ISD to participate in the JJAEP for the 2017-18 school year. We have any questions on that agenda item? Mr. Jackson?
Just a basic question, and it's one I ask every year. We still follow the process of the least amount of time in JJ. Are we intending to continue that policy going forth?
Yes, but if you don't mind, I'll let Ms. Agumike.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, we plan on continuing that. We're not changing any of our processes for the 2017-18 school year.
Thank you. I know when the majority of the board took a tour of JJ, the people there wanted to impress upon us that this district was different than other districts in that we always tried to have the minimum amount of time in JJ for any of our students assigned, which I think makes a world of sense. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Any other?
And if is 2 what we did last year as well? Okay,
Yes.
that's what I thought. I just want to confirm.
Could I make just one comment, or just for the board to know? We do everything possible to only send non-discretionary students to the JJAEP. Anytime we have discretion, we try to keep them in district, if at all possible.
Is the board's pleasure for that to be on consent or separate? Consent? Consent? That'll move to consent. F, the board will consider approving on first reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, BDAA local, officers and officials, duties and requirements of board officers. 2, EF local, instructional resources, that's an addition. 3, EFA local, instructional resources, instructional materials, that's a deletion. 4, EFAA local, instructional resources, selection and adoption, that's a deletion. 5, EHDB local, alternative methods for earning credit by examination with prior instruction, revision. 6, EIF local, academic achievement, graduation, a revision. 7, EL local, campus charters, that's a revision. Any questions on any of those items? That's a number of items. Any questions? Mr. Jackson?
This would be on page 74, where we're changing board officers shall serve for a term of 2 years. And we also have in there the old language, a board member shall not hold the same office for more than 2 consecutive terms. So that means we're now saying that any officer can hold the position for 4 years?
No, I don't believe that is the intent of that at all, but Ms. Sims, will you talk to that? I thought this was just to bring us in line with what we actually do. At one point, we had 1-year terms.
It is to be consistent because we don't do elections every year now. And so the board then would make the decision as to whether or not in a rotation or however you wanted to do it, how many consecutive terms, if any consecutive terms, a board officer would serve. It doesn't require it, it just states that you can do, and that's again a local policy. We can change that as well. This is a first reading, so if the board wants to think about that, and if you want to change it to no more than 1 consecutive term. But as it reads now, it would give you the option if an individual wanted to stay in an office at the pleasure of the board for 2 terms, 2 2-year terms. So I'm going to be clear on what I'm saying, if that makes sense. But the way it was written, our local modeled prior to us going to the 4-year term. So it said that we would elect trustees every year rather than saying after every election. So now, since we do, in order to save money, we move to the 4-year term so that we would have elections every other year. And so we would need to bring local into line with that and say that you would elect officers the terms were 2 years. If that makes sense, because legal says that you elect after each election.
So the old policy said that the maximum time any officer could serve in one capacity in one office was 2 years.
Yeah, consecutively.
And if we don't make the change, we're modifying it, saying that an officer can serve for no more than 4 years in any one officer position.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull it up. What it says is and you may have it in front of you, Mr.
I
Jackson.
do.
You can read it. Does it say terms or years?
Officers may succeed themselves in office, however, board members shall not hold the same office for more than 2 consecutive terms.
Terms. That's what I thought.
So we're changing
terms,
a
not
term.
years.
Well, but we're changing a term from 1 year to 2 years.
Correct.
So the old policy was a term of 1 year,
Correct.
and you could serve twice.
Twice. Correct.
So a total of 2 years. But the way that it's written is we're now saying that any officer can stay in the same position for a total of 4 years.
Correct.
Yeah,
Unless
you're
we-
right.
Terms.
You're
Unless
right.
we change it back to the policy that we used to have.
Well, but I would recommend you further change the policy if you want to limit the number of terms. I wouldn't recommend that you change the length of the officer term because it needs to align with when we elect officers. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I don't know
I
if
thought
I'm
that, I
explaining it
actually
well.
thought that's the only thing we were changing.
Well, that is the only thing we are changing. The limit on the term is not required. You don't have to do, I mean, I think that the board has in the past rotated. It doesn't mean that it's not required.
Okay.
Does that make sense? And so I didn't change any more than needed to be changed to be consistent with the local. If you would like to, as a board, limit the number of consecutive terms, so keeping in mind the number of years in a term, absolutely. That's why we have 2 readings is, you give feedback on changes and then we can further change it if you want to say 2 years in total as opposed to 2 terms.
Well,
Go ahead.
we've typically had the 2-year rotation, and the thought behind that was if you had an extremely dysfunctional board and they put someone in the role of president, that you would only have to suffer through that for a 2-year period.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it doesn't sound like it was our thought process, but it doesn't sound like that was ever our policy.
No, it's not. It just says what the policy says. Really, you're right. The policy says that you have a maximum of 2 terms. And when the terms were of a 1-year duration, the net effect of that is 2 years when we used to do elections every year. We don't do them every year, but that doesn't mean that you can't realign officers every election, which would be every 2 years. So you can keep the same practice and do rotate after 1 term if that's what the board decides. The policy as written gives you the flexibility to have 2
Okay.
terms,
Okay.
but it doesn't require a rotation. That's the reason I shouldn't say mess with that language, but I didn't change that language because it gives you maximum flexibility. You're not changing signature plates or checks or those types of things if you decided that you wanted to keep the same structure for a second election cycle, i.e. a second year, years 3 and 4. But that would be a board decision. But if you want to collectively decide either an board operating guidelines or through the local policy that, we would really like to stick to the 2 years at a time, then yeah, you can individually shoot that feedback. We can do
that now?
Because I watch all this.
Yeah.
See what the deal is.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to start. I get my cues from being able to see the camera back there, and it tells me when we're on, and I can't do that now, so we're just going to keep on talking, and if we need to stop, David will step out and tell us. All right, so we were discussing some of the changes or revisions that we are making to make sure that our language in our section about officer terms for the board matches up with our term of office. And we have had some feedback that we would like for that to be the same way it was in the past. That is, every 2 years when we re-elect, we reorganize. And I think I'm capturing the feedback that I've gotten from everybody. Is that correct?
Well, more than reorganize, I think the question is to the length of a term in terms of years that you can serve in one particular office. So we will still have elections every time new trustees are elected. But I think the question hinges on how long you may stay in any one particular office.
I think you're talking consecutive all the time, because in the past, like Lida served twice as president, but they weren't next to each other.
Correct, and the old approach was you could serve 2 consecutive one-year terms.
Yeah.
So if we keep that concept, you could only serve 1 term of 2 years.
Is that agreeable to everyone? Is that the feedback that we would like?
I think the key word's consecutive.
Okay.
As I understand, what we want to go to is no one can serve 2 consecutive terms in a particular.
All right, so Marnie, you'll work your magic and get that language correct.
Correct. What I would suggest is that as it reads, currently it says officers may succeed themselves in office, however, not more than 2 consecutive terms. I would just say officers may not succeed themselves in office, since it's now 2-year terms.
That's perfect.
Okay.
And I'll just strike the rest
I
of the
think
sentence.
that captures the intent of the board.
Okay, perfect. And then, so that we'll look for that red line on the second reading next month. The red line will be just a little different.
Very good. All right. So with that redlined correction, are we comfortable putting that forward on, well, it's got another reading.
Yeah, it's got another
Yeah.
reading.
Second
so-
reading next month, okay? Everybody comfortable with that?
Mm-hmm.
All right, good. All right, the board will consider approving on second reading additions, revisions, or deletions to district policies. 1, DC local employment practices, that's a revision. 2, DFAA local probationary contracts, suspension, termination during contracts, revision. 3, DFBA local term contracts, suspension, termination during contract, revision. 4, DFCA local continuing contract, suspension, termination, also a revision. And 5, GKB local community relations, advertising, and fundraising, revision. Any questions on those second reading items? Seeing none, may that move to consensus. All right, that brings us to item number H. The board will consider approving the use of job order contracting as the construction delivery method for the 2017 district-wide security vestibules project, offering the best value to the district. Any questions on that item? Mr. Covey?
Yeah, okay. Roy, the district-wide security vestibules project, can you kind of bring us up? That's where you're talking about security in our elementary schools?
Yes, sir.
and
We'll
like
be
that.
adding, I think, a little over 60 some odd campuses will need the security vestibules that were included in the 2014 authorization. So this is actually doing it district-wide, and so we can expedite that work instead of prolonging it all the way through 2019 and 2020 with all the phases that we have for the entire bond program.
And so what do you see as far as a completion date on something like that?
Right now, I think we're looking at it, it's going to be staged. We're going to do it in groups of projects working. What we're going to do is once you approve this delivery method, we're going to come back to the board next month with an actual contract award recommendation. Once that's approved again by you guys, we'll work with the contractor, but we're going to look at breaking the district down in parts and pieces, so it'll probably be over 3 or 4 phases. So it could be about 1.5 years, maybe 2 years, Dylan. Correct me if I'm wrong on the schedule.
No, that's correct. Our anticipation is to be completed by December of next year. So, majority of it will be done, if everything goes as planned with, the board approval tonight and next month. The majority of it will be done by the end of next summer with, certain phases going into the fall of next year.
I'm thrilled that you're doing this now, so thank you. Appreciate you.
Any other questions on that agenda item? Would you like that separate or on consent?
Consent's fine.
Consent's fine. All right, we'll move that to consent. I, the board, will consider approving the sanitary sewer line agreement and conveyance of utility facilities between Harris County Municipal Utility District Number 166 and Cypress-Fairbanks ISD for an existing sanitary sewer line located at the northwest side of West Little York and Yorkshire Woods at Kayla Middle School. Any questions on that project? Seeing none, may that move to consent? All right, that will be on consent. We have 3 more agenda items plus a discussion. All of those items will actually be in executive session. I'm going to read all of the items first, though. There'll be no decisions made on any of these items, just like there are no decisions made on any of the items that we discussed today. We'll be making all of our decisions on Monday, but we will be in executive session after we get a motion, after I've read all these items. So I want to encourage those of you that are going to, that are in the audience, that you go on home until we're ready to re-meet on Monday and go over the decisions on this. The items that we'll be discussing in closed session: J, the district will consider the hiring of the chief internal auditor. K, the district will consider a level 4 appeal, Daniel, of a level 3 decision. L, the district will consider a level 4 appeal, Fleming, of a level 3 decision. And 6, discussion A, the board will receive free legal advice. Oh, I'm sorry. I just don't know why I put the word free in there, Marnie. I just don't know what I was thinking of.
You get what you pay.
Now, I would never say that I was intending that. I can say that I just can't read. The board will receive legal advice from the general counsel on First Amendment issues. I think that's the way, there's that F in First Amendment, related to school and board activities.
Well, working here feels like a gift anyway.
Oh, my goodness.
And it just keeps giving.
Yes.
All right. I don't even know how to explain that. All right, so as I mentioned, I would love to see us go into an executive session, and I need a motion to do so.
I move that we adjourn to closed session.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those signify agreement by raising your right hand. All right, we're going to move into executive session. There'll be about 5 or so, 10 minutes while everything is set up. We'll have our first hearing, and then we'll have our second hearing. In the meantime, the board, if you could go into our
Yeah, we can try to do the other stuff as much as we can before the hearings.
So I can't get into it here unless they can bypass it.